in sweet surrender to the luminous love light of the one. We are opening up in sweet surrender to the luminous love light of the one. We are opening up in sweet surrender to the luminous light of the one. We are opening up in sweet surrender to the luminous love light of the one. We are rising up like a phoenix from the fire. Brothers and sisters, spread your wings and fly higher. We are rising up like a phoenix from the fire. Brothers and sisters, to your wings and fly higher. We are rising up like a phoenix from the fire. Brothers and sisters, spread your wings and fly higher. We are rising up like a phoenix from the fire. Brothers and sisters, to your wings and fly higher. We are rising up like a phoenix from the fire. Spread your wings and fly higher. We are rising up like a phoenix from the fire.
have some news about it. We'd like to introduce the co-clerks for that committee. Claire Tinkerhess and Paul Tinkerhess, that there will be a 2018 gathering.
Tonight, we will have an introduction to the 2018 gathering. We will have
I have some news about it. We'd like to introduce the co-clerks for that committee. Claire Tinkerhess and Paul Tinkerhess, that there will be a 2018 gathering.
Tonight, we will have an introduction to the 2018 gathering.
Hey, yeah.
We will have
I have some
And I'm
news
Paul
about it.
Tinkerhess, and we're
I'd like to introduce the co-clerks for that
Yeah.
Claire Tinkerhess and Paul Tinkerhess, that there will be a 2018 gathering.
Hey, yeah.
Spirit, we will have
I have some
And I'm Paul Tinkerhess, and we're
I'd like to introduce the co-clerks for that
yeah.
Claire Tinkerhess and Paul Tinkerhess, that there will be a 2018 gathering.
but I want to take a minute and name some people.
Hey, yeah.
Actually, a lot of people
I have some
who are
Tinkerhess, and
responsible for this meeting. And first of all, it's
Yeah.
Katrina.
Claire Tinkerhess and Paul
I'm
Tinkerhess,
sure
there will
we'll
be a
co-clerk.
2018 gathering.
But you know what? Let's hold. If we can hold the applause till the end. No, but I want you responsible. And first of all, so Stephen, Katrina, Linda, and we'll co-clerk. Yeah, but let's hold. If we can keep moving through this, then no, but we're planning committee. Members of the receptors 2017 planning committee, Linda, stand up. And we'll co-clerk. Let's see. Yeah, but let's lots of volunteers. You might not have worked over the year through this, but you volunteered this week. No, but we're planning committee. And members of the receptors 2017 planning workshop. Stand up. And would all of you co-clerk? Let's see. Yeah, but let's lots of volunteers. You might not have worked over the year through this, but you volunteered. There's also a committee planning committee. And members of the receptors 2017 planning workshop. Stand up. And would all of you co-clerk? Let's see. Yeah, but let's lots of volunteers. You might not have worked over the year through this, but you volunteered. There's also a committee planning committee. Members of the receptors 2017 planning if you're one of those people in that planning, please stand up. You co-clerk. Let's see. Yeah, but let's lots of volunteers. You might not have worked over the year through this, but you volunteered. There's also a committee planning committee. All of this if you're one of those people in that, some of them will probably stand up. You go upstairs, but we know there's people. Yeah, but let's lots of volunteers. You might not have worked over the year. There's also a committee planning committee. All of this if you're one of those people in that, some of them will probably stand up. You go upstairs, but we know there's people. Yeah, but let's lots of volunteers. You might not have worked over the year. There's also a committee planning all of this there's waiting. If you're one of those people in that, some of them will probably stand up. You go upstairs, but we know there's people. Yeah, but let's lots of volunteers. You might not have worked over the there's also a committee planning all of this there's waiting. If you're one of those people in that, some of them will probably stand up. You go upstairs, but we know there's people. Yeah, but let's lots of volunteers. You might not have worked over there's also a committee planning all of this there's waiting. If you're one of those people in that, some of them will probably stand up. You go upstairs, but we know there's people. Yeah, but let's lots of volunteers. You might not have worked over there's also a committee planning all of this there's waiting. If you're one of those people in that, some of them will probably stand up. You go upstairs, but we know there's people. Yeah, but let's lots of volunteers. You might not have worked over there's also a committee planning all of this there's waiting. If you're one of those people in that, some of them will probably stand up. You go upstairs, but we know there's people. Yeah, but let's lots of volunteers. You might not have worked over there's also a committee planning all of this
campus state preserve. The 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 campus state preserve.
On those she meets. I've enjoyed the challenge of that stretching, and I believe you will too. In the current milieu of friends, where some are deemed activist friends, and some are deemed contemplative friends, Pamela Boyce stands out as a friend with deep roots in both dimensions, and one who integrates and embodies both in her life and her work. On the more active end of the spectrum, she is a veteran of local, regional, and national resilience building with the Transition Environmental Movement, convening the Mid-Atlantic Transition Hub, a 6-state network of environmental activists facilitating economic relocalization and environmental resilience building. Her current focus on food sovereignty and water access extends from village grassroots work with local partners throughout the African diaspora to convening a Quaker-led Earth Care coalition of environmental organizations at the United Nations. She helps teams, leaders, and organizations identify and map out leverage points where they can make tactical interventions, create Afro-centered food production solutions, and initiate strategies for shifting critical discourse. On the contemplative end of the spectrum, Pamela brings years as a friend committed to the use of our practice as a means to receiving guidance for our lives, as well as her being a meditation instructor in the today to better engage with the challenges that we were born into. She has taken this diverse range of skills and has initiated what she calls the Quaker Pathway Forward, rekindling the power of Fox, inviting friends from across North America to deepen in our practice and to apply the rich tools we possess as friends to shift the culture around us from one of denial to one fully embracing the dire condition and the need for radical intervention. I have been led to be one of those friends working with them. At the FWCC section of the Americas gathering at Stony Point, New York in March, I was part of a working group looking at how the Peace Act Minute on living sustainably and sustaining life on Earth was or was not being implemented by friends across the globe. And if we were living up to the commitment we made at the World Gathering in Kabarak, Kenya in 2012, with a call for peace and eco-justice. In that working group gathered from across the hemisphere, this query came to me. Are you willing to live your life as though climate disruption is a reality? More than any other friend I know, Pamela Boyce is living her life fully in that reality. Pamela will speak out of worship, and after we re-enter worship after her message, I would ask you to hold your applause. Friends are invited to offer ministry out of worship. After we close worship, if there's time, there will be a question and answer period that will end at 8:45. In the question and answer period, we will use the liberated stack method of giving preference to members of our beloved community who often don't have as much of a voice as others. People of color, queer friends, women, youth. Those friends will be given the first opportunities to speak. When we finish the question and answer period, that will be the time for your applause. Thank you.
It's just the time, or maybe it's the time I'm living. And we got to get ourselves back to the garden.
Good evening, radiant friends. It is beautiful to see you here. I've enjoyed you all week, and frankly, I've given this talk so many times in little snippets all week. Many of you have heard it. Thank you, Christopher, Steve, Katrina, Ruth, the FGC staff, and hundreds of volunteers for an absolutely amazing week. Thank you, Conover Sims and Gwendolyn Boyce Sims. Where do I start? I am from Woodstock, New York. I'm a member of Hudson Monthly Meeting, New York Yearly Meeting. I am a non-theist friend. I'm currently doing work at the UN for Quaker Earth Care Witness that is absolutely consuming me in a good way, and I'm also a resident scholar at Pendle Hill. Our opening song encapsulated a lot of what this evening's presentation is about. We are stardust. Literally are stardust. We are billion-year-old carbon. And we are golden friends, Quaker friends are golden. And now our task is to get back to the proverbial garden to be able to apprehend the unity of earth care, eco-justice, and equality. Because these themes are all one and the same. It's my intent tonight to invite friends from among you who feel called to step forward into a critical mass of Quakers who choose, who determine, and who practice consciously and deliberately to simultaneously live in the conventional day-to-day world while surrendering to the realm of the undifferentiated, the realm of spirit, the realm of light, the realm of God, of universal intelligence, in service to the earth who is in travail, in service to all of Earth's sentient inhabitants, and in service to those who are most disproportionately impacted by climate change, resource depletion, economic instability, and aberrant income disparity. Tonight's talk is about enhancing our ability to purposefully see with clarified vision. It's about regrounding ourselves in the source of unified, searingly accurate corporate Quaker vision that can jumpstart and sustain meaningful 21st century transformation, indeed, evolution. When we zoom in and look at the conventional day-to-day world, we witness too, facing existential crises of climate change, resource depletion, and economic instability. We live, and there's no denying it, in a time of aberrant, environmentally devastating, and crushingly unjust political circumstances. However, when we zoom out and align with spirit, we witness to the fact that we are all literally stardust. We are golden and existential crises or not. We embody light. And we now know scientifically that we are indeed billion-year-old carbon. We are survivors, and we will thrive, friends. We've just got to get ourselves back to the garden. The task of Quaker Friends, what we must accomplish in the 21st century in order to make a dent in today's multi-tiered, deeply interconnected, complex problems. The challenges themselves are complex adaptive systems. To catalyze social transformation, and yes, friends, to stay relevant as Quaker Friends, is to broaden, deepen, and unify our vision. So my offering this evening revolves around Friends' ability, especially our spiritually inherent ability as Quakers, with a potentially profound contemplative practice, to hold the space with clarity and poise and equanimity, with what, given our conditioning, appears to be paradox, but in actuality is two sides of the same coin, the exact same coin. You are invited to apprehend a wider swath of spiritual reality, to live in peace with unprecedented uncertainty, which is the stuff of evolutionary consciousness. Friends, in this day and age, we are called to evolve. Nothing more, nothing less than to take an evolutionary step. And fortunately, deepened and consistent spiritual practice can now be informed by 21st century quantum and neuroscience, which provide us ample tools to navigate and to leverage the apparent paradox. 20th century activism tactics cannot hold a candle to the complex 21st century existential challenges we face. However, Quakers who learn how to clarify the prism through which our contemplative practice flows into social transformation are golden. Friends hold a key in the DNA of the Quakerism of George Fox. We understand silence. We understand stillness. We know how to still and clear away the normal dualistic mind that gets us through the day. It's that mind which is is simply not up to today's challenges. Friends, our strength, our relevance in this century lies in our living into non-duality. We talk about unity, but I'm talking about living into non-duality, living into I and the Father are one. Breathing, eating, sleeping, dreaming, acting at all levels of the Quaker constellation from a place of non-dualistic unity. Unity doesn't proceed from intellectualism and mind-brain concepts, political analysis and deconstruction of the isms, or cerebral activism. Quaker 21st century activism and relevance lies in reawakening and then purposefully, deliberately, consciously honing a new old set of tools that align us much more with the powerful magnetic energy field of the heart's compassion. It is a cultivated, open heart that connects us with spirit. We glibly say that God is love, having little or no understanding of what that means beyond intellectually trying to do the right thing and live a good life. Friends, we are now called at this critical juncture in history to step it up, to purposefully learn to still thought, to receive truth for our times, from the undifferentiated, intelligent field of love and co-create in concert with that love. So, before we get completely settled and focused and deep into this and drill into this, I always like to take the temperature of the group assembled. So if you would, I have a few inventory actions that I would like to invite you to do. So when you hear an action, could you just please follow suit if this is in accordance with who you are. Clap with vigor if you are in profound awe of the natural splendor and majesty that is Niagara Falls. I love my yearly meeting. Snap your fingers if you love your yearly meeting. Raise your hand high if you found a spiritual family at some level of the Quaker constellation, a monthly meeting, a yearly meeting, membership in a national organization, an international Quaker organization. Good to see. Stamp your feet if, oh, Canada, you love Canadians and you love Canada, and you're thrilled that Canada yearly meeting and New York yearly meeting hosted this event together. Oh, Canada. Stand and applaud if the FGC gathering is one of the most superb highlights of your entire year. Survivors, we are thrivers, and we are friends who are golden. Have a seat, please. Go back and recognize and acknowledge that friends already have everything that we need to rock this world with good. We have everything we need already as Quaker friends to trigger evolution in the 21st century, as friends have done time and time again, century after century. Let's begin by consciously reclaiming and receiving the gifts of ancestors. Thank you, Charlie, from Western Virginia. Come with me, friends. I'd like to tell you a story and invite you to relax fully into your inner vision. Come with me on a journey back in time. Let us immerse ourselves in the strength of our ancestors, in the exaltation of their direct and profound connection with nature. Their direct and profound connection with spirit, to their clarity of vision, to their unabashed, courageous shedding, peeling off, stepping outside of what becomes in every age the conventional wisdom. Friends have been at the epicenter and forefront of social transformation for centuries, and it's time in the 21st century to prepare ourselves to step forward and pick up that mantle. I invite you to take a moment this evening to explore the experiences of early friends. Together, we'll take a journey back in time to visit our ancestors. From this present moment in this place, we will begin to walk slowly backward in time. Move back from the events of this day to your waking up. Keep walking back through this last week of the gathering. What did you do this past week? This last month? What were your experiences at home, at work, moving about in the wider community in your home? Move back now through the months and the seasons, spring, winter, the year turning into 2017. And now let's walk slowly back through 2016. Back through each decade of your life. See perhaps the loss of someone close, the birth of a child, grandchild, or children, the milestones in the lives of your children and family. Encounter again the relationships, the passions, the learning. You're moving back through your young adulthood to your teenage years. Can you see yourself as a teenager? Your hopes, your heartaches, your aspirations? Enter your childhood, seeing the familiar places and faces that you knew, and sense the radiant child that you were. You're now growing smaller and your baby carried in arms. Now you're back in your mother's womb, about to enter the birth canal and burst into this world. That which is alive in you did not begin with that conception, so step back into your parents' lives. That man and that woman who turned and saw each other and in their unity gave you life. See your parents, friends. Move back through the work they did, the struggles they faced, the mistakes your parents made, the tribulations and the joys that they knew. Move back to their teenage years, their childhoods, their infancies, their birth, back to the womb that bore your parents. Continue walking back in time into the lives of your grandparents and great-grandparents, back through the century of wars, explosions of technology, before the automobile, telephone, before electricity. See shadows of gas lamps flickering across the faces and lives of your ancestors, whose names you no longer know, but who, in a gesture, a smile, a turn of your head, they live on through you. Moving back along this river of life, back through the Industrial Revolution, through dark factories and teeming city streets that swallowed the lives of your people, people, some uprooted from the land, some laboring in sweatshops, some in armies, some in mines. You're moving back through the centuries now, through wars and revolutions, the excitement of new land discovered and steady sameness of tilling the earth. Generations of ancestors, some settled for centuries in one place, others roaming the land for centuries, others carried off to start in new distant surroundings. Move back to a harsher, simpler time, marked by the seasons, walking back through lives of men and women, peasants and magistrates, scholars and artisans, slaves and slave owners, thieves and beggars, generals and foot soldiers forced into battle. Even then, they carried you within them like a seed. These are your ancestors. Ancestors perhaps skilled in the ancient art of healing, with eyes like yours, hands like yours, baking bread, gathering herbs, ministering to others. You're passing back through the rise and fall of civilizations, thousands of years passing. The first cities rise out of red clay and then fall into ruin. Reflect back to an even earlier time, before the days of empire, before the land was tilled. Witness the times of forest settlements and the long treks of your ancestors across the continents. Their voyages in rafts, long marches in the age of ice. Back through the millennia, you walk. You walk with them to your beginnings 20 or 30,000 generations ago. Now stop. Turn around. We're going to reverse the process. With the very first ones, I invite you to look out over the savannah. The journey lies ahead of your people now. Walk forward on that journey and return through time with a harvest in mind. We come from an unbroken line of survivors. We are the manifestation of an unbroken line of survivors. We are the descendants of an unbroken line of survivors, and each one of your ancestors had a gift to bestow. Open your hearts and receive their gifts, gather them in. These ancestors gave you the texture of skin, your skin, the shape of your back, the marrow of your bones. They gave you courage, they gave you strength, they gave you perseverance as they traveled through the land, hunting, playing, making babies, dying. Take these gifts, friends, take these gifts. Drink in the joy of their resilience. We must become the joy of their resilience. Come forward through the years, receiving the gifts of your ancestors. Receive what they offer. Receive all that you need. Walk up through the centuries and see the trust in the eyes of the children, the passion in the eyes of the young, the wisdom in the eyes of the aged. Receive these gifts. Receive the creativity of your ancestors, building homes, making tools, weaving cloth, the compassion of your ancestors, caring for the injured, praying with the dying. All of this, too, is for you. Know their love of beauty, the music of a lone flute echoing through the hills. Hands carving jewelry, feet dancing to the rhythm of drums. Receive that celebration as your gift. Know the intelligence of your ancestors as they tracked the movement of the stars. Learn the way of plants and animals, held counsel to choose the wisest action. Receive their intelligence as their gift to you. Can you sense the love that burns in your ancestors? The devotion to their families, to the land? Receive these gifts to you. Receive their wit, their joy, the laughter, their banter in the fields, the merriment of the festivals. They offer lessons and gifts of suffering too: courage, strength, endurance, stubborn perseverance, and resilience. resilience. These gifts are also for you. 12,000 years ago, much of this earth was covered with ice. The water of the melting glaciers began to rush toward the world's oceans, causing floods around the world. In 5000 BCE, 7,017 years ago, the Black Sea, off the coast of Turkey, there was a massive flood. This wasn't a slow-moving, advancing rise of the sea, but a massive flood that then stayed. The land that went under stayed under. The now salty Black Sea, once an isolated freshwater lake surrounded by farmland, was flooded by an enormous wall of water from the rising Mediterranean Sea. The force of this water was 200 times that of Niagara Falls, sweeping everything in its path. The story of this traumatic event, seared into the collective memory of the survivors, was passed down from generation to generation. And God remembered Noah, and all of the beasts, and all of the cattle that were with him on the ark. And God caused a great wind to pass over the earth, and the waters subsided. Also the fountains of the deep and the floodgates of the sky were closed, and the rain from the sky was restrained, and the water receded steadily from the earth. And at the end of 150 days, the water decreased. In the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark rested upon the mountains of Ararat. Uplifting echoes of prescient, obedient, and courageous Noah beckon to all in the 21st century. In the 21st century, who would be, and whose descendants would be, and whose descendants would be, a robust, joyous, and spiritually evolved remnant in a post-carbon future. Friends, come with me this evening on an evolutionary journey through the eye of the climate change needle. As in Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, in which cultural rebels in a book-destroying future each memorized a classic work of literature and thus became the living, breathing books themselves in order to transmit the DNA and treasures of their civilization to the next generation. So too are friends like Noah called to be a strong, healthy, vibrant, and robust remnant that carries forth the DNA of deep connection to spirit, to light, to the undifferentiated field in a post-carbon future transformed by climate change. Fast forward from Noah 6,652 years and stand shoulder to shoulder with George Fox in 1652 when fully conscious of spirit streaming through him, he looks out from over the summit of Pendle Hill, over the landscape, the fire of enlightenment rising in him, and determines to be a torch of awakening. Receive the fire of Fox in your heart, friends. Fast forward. Receive wave after wave of love radiating from the heart center of John Woolman, which emanating so viscerally from the fire of this friend's enlightenment that he wordlessly conveyed his message of compassion for all humanity. Fast forward. Witness the stubborn determination of Lucretia Mott and Alice Paul and Susan B. Anthony, who, like scrappy, intense, tireless terriers with teeth holding fast to the pant leg of of the seemingly monolithic behemoth of patriarchy wouldn't let go of that pant leg until the 19th Amendment passed. Receive the one-pointed clarity and intentionality of these friends. Receive the inspiration of Rufus Jones as he exhorts friends to understand that far from being accessible in a few overwhelming rare moments dubbed mystical, Spirit is pervasive, omnipresent, and accessible to everyone at all times, at any time. Those moments can be prolonged until those moments of mystical connection are no longer mystical because they are the norm. Link arms with Baird Rustin and receive the courage he radiates as he stands fully and unabashedly in his truth, which shifted and anchored an entire movement more deeply into nonviolence. Friends, this is the time of the great unlearning. Abolitionists, suffragists, civil rights movement activists, at every single historical turning point in this country, friends have stood in their truth. Quakers awoke and reawakened the corporate body. They shook off the seductive sleep of the prevailing cultural norms surrounding them, and they put themselves through the paces of internal transformation. Each time there were schisms and friends were at each other, and it was very difficult for friends because literally they were swimming upstream in a culture that they all become accustomed to. But there's always that subset, always that swath of friends, always that group of friends that are so deeply ensconced in the fire of Fox and Woolman that they're connected and they stay connected and they see that something is not right. Something needs to shift, and that cadre of friends hold fast and model oneness, as Rufus Jones would say, oneness with spirit, oneness with God, oneness with light, and they learn to live as George Fox did, simultaneously in two separate worlds. Friends have said to me, if George Fox walked into our meeting, I don't know if he would be welcome, because he seemed kind of bizarre. He lived in two completely different worlds simultaneously. The problems that we have in the 21st century, friends, call us to this kind of service, this kind of depth in practice. The great unlearning of mechanistic thinking, the societal sediment, the conditioning, the silt, the goop that we as friends in the 21st century must divest ourselves of is mechanistic, unidirectional thinking that focuses immediately and reflexively, incessantly on division, separation, and fragmentation. I and the Father are one in Western culture has been filtered through Greek duality, polarity, either-or thinking viewed through the binary lenses of apparent paradox that stops shy of fully embracing and working with a larger, dynamic, holistic, impermanent, messy, and interrelated kaleidoscope of life. The fact that there is a non-dual way of reading reality where there's a possibility of one's humanity coexisting simultaneously with one's light, with one's divinity, hasn't been explored and cultivated. We, just like every time these movements crescendoed among friends, we've become mired in the weight of mechanistic unidirectional thinking. The educated Western Western mind doesn't know what to do with interconnectivity and non-duality. We don't know how to experience that, except to label it mysticism. And it's not mysticism, it's life. The neglect of non-dualism was then anchored in the collective unconscious by the sledgehammer of Cartesian logic and mechanistic Newtonian physics, which depicted the world as a giant clock, a collection of parts. René Descartes' assertion that we are our thoughts represents the low point of Western spirituality and philosophy. It is a philosophy that disconnected humanity from nature, which was then a rationale to continue to grow an economy which would dominate, exploit, and degrade the natural world. But this kind of thinking, more so than we can even begin to deconstruct in our own minds, has become the water in which we swim. It's the air which we breathe. It's the binary, unidirectional, disconnected thinking that's causing the travail of the earth and the commodification of every sentient being thereupon. It is the cultivation of dualistic mind that focuses on and wallows in stratification by race, stratification by ethnicity, stratification by educational level, by socioeconomic level, by... Dualistic mind is one big judge. It's a big judgment machine. Consider how it works. Someone treats us badly, someone's done us wrong. This is what we're doing. And we start to wrap the storyline around the incident and revolve it incessantly over and over in our minds, coding it with heavy, slimy negativity and outraged indignation. Doing this is so seductive because it's proving someone else is bad. And the dualistic mind needs that sense of superiority sometimes. And the desire to root out the transgressor and punish the transgressor often traps us, often for a lifetime, building entire movements around revolving the tapes of the isms, which when focused on intently and incessantly only serve to precipitate more of the precise suffering that we don't want. We wallow in it. Most people don't see this, just like we don't see dualistic thinking. But these are fruitless patterns, but they become the norm, and we get fixated on being righteous and right. That does not mean that we stick our heads in the sand and pretend that egregious injustice and structural pervasiveness of the isms don't exist. We can't hide behind the assertion that everything is everything and everything's a bowl of cherries in some kind of Pollyanna way. I'm a mother, an African-American mother of 3 sons that stand over 6 feet who are imposing men, and I know for a fact that their advanced degrees and the way that they live certainly isn't going to preclude them being gunned down in the street and the perpetrator not held to anything. It's not sticking one's head in the sand, but what I do suggest is that approaching aberrant social injustice from the starting vantage point of unity, of the undifferentiated, of spirit, might be a way to pull us out of the morass instead of revolving around it and deconstructing it. We can learn to enter deepened contemplative practice where we stand. We're not doing that. We can learn to deepen our practice, deepen our receptivity, stand in silent stillness of wholeness rather than wounded fixation on repetitive analytical deconstruction of historical fragmentation. If I were to look back at earth care, equality, and eco-justice, when we look at the justice issues when we start at the level and the frequency of fragmentation, we stay there, we get stuck there. If we start from a place of unity and light and spirit, which also means we really need to habituate ourselves to constantly be in that space of mystical connection, which is very possible. Early friends did it. What I'm suggesting is, in dealing with the isms, it's kind of like looking at a problem where there's storming and hurricanes and tornadoes and dark clouds and lightning and people being swept away and incredible suffering underneath a cloud cover. But above the cloud cover, there is still the sun. There is still the light. It's just seeing and holding both of them simultaneously, which we've moved away from. If we can stand for longer and longer periods of time, not just on first day, not just occasionally in worship, but walk around, holding and surrendering to spirit and the light, we have the ability then to move back down through the cloud cover and truly be of assistance, as opposed to staying in that same whirlpool, that same vortex. So, this is what we are facing. 21st century, enter 21st century quantum science that can inform what we do with our minds, how we direct our minds, how we sharpen our vision, how we unmuddy the prism through which the leadings we bring out of silence, unmuddied and implemented with clarity and precision. Quantum science has finally come where George Fox was 365 years ago, where avatars from the dawn of time have been. Quantum science has finally figured out how we can actually use it to deepen our practice. So this is an invitation to shift lenses. As I've been doing workshops out the week, I've been doing little exercises that invite friends to shift the way we see the world. I'm inviting you to shift lenses and suspend the normal way we see things for a moment. Because somewhere around the mid part of our lives, our mind brains become so heavily conditioned with a grid of thought we've created that the only thing we let into our minds that's new are things that already affirm that we already know. So I'm asking to open mind, open heart, and dip our toes into non-dual, quantum neurobiological understanding of reality. Much of this we've heard before, but it remains abstract and removed from our day-to-day worlds. What I propose is that impactful engagement with 21st century challenges compels us to understand and embrace practices that acculturate us to live this deepened understanding of ourselves and the world. So here we go. Everything is perception. Everything is frequency. We translate and interpret these frequencies through our own perceptual lenses. The longer more and more people think and perceive the same thing in the same way due to our conditioning, like unidirectional separated thinking, that vibrational manifestation stabilizes, and it appears to be enduring. But think about this for a minute. Think of yourself as a human body with lots of different organ systems, all of which radiate energy. You are a whole stream of processes, this whole row of people, all of the chairs, the floor, the ceiling, everything is one big kaleidoscope of moving energy. Helen resonates Helen because of Helen's experience. Marvin resonates radiates Marvin because of Marvin's experience. Different frequency, same energy. You are different because you're sitting next than you were 2 seconds ago because you're sitting next to the person you're sitting with. I am different because I looked at you and you responded back to me. Every second we are changing. We are growing new organs as we speak. We are completely new human beings every month. And when you shift your perspective, if you decide you're going to be healthy and vibrant, that energy the energy of the mind is so strong that when your organs regenerate, you have the power to shift yourself into the mind-body connection, into a whole other way of being. What I'm suggesting is that we tune into this same energy in that pew on that bench every first day. All I'm suggesting is that we learn what it is and we learn to work with it so we can deepen our practice, because the way we did it before was great for every successive generation of friends. But in the 21st century, we are careening off of a cliff. The problems are existential now. Friends, if we can deepen practice in this way by understanding, not just cerebrally understanding non-duality. We say unity at a drop of a hat. But we cerebrally understand non-duality, but live into it by being courageous enough to be 21st century. I usually don't like to use the word mystics, but just sums up so much. To stay in that frequency, stay in that energy. Then we have a shot of when we go off that cliff, we can sprout wings. That's the kind of evolutionary step that stands in front of us now. We are called to be a robust remnant that sprouts wings. And only if we center ourselves back in the fire and the connection that people like George Watts had lived, do we have a shot at fanning the flame under more numbers of people to be in that remnant. So, that being said, we can choose where to direct our attention, and where you direct your attention is who you become. If you are directing your attention to light, if you're directing your attention to spirit, if you're directing your attention to the undifferentiated, if you're directing your attention to your heart and the joy, we say God is love really easily, don't we? How do you learn to associate into God is love? The undifferentiated field, the universal field of universal energy, is nothing but love and compassion. When we've got all of this dualistic conditioning in our mind, we still our thoughts, we observe our thoughts, we calm our minds, and in so doing, we align ourselves with the energy of heart. You do realize that your heart, as I mentioned, I'm looking at Karen, electromagnetic fields. She is a physical being that I see here, but her heart has an electromagnetic field. Every organ system does. Her brain has an electromagnetic field too, but her heart field is exponentially stronger than her brain. Which is why I'm saying, friends, we still this discursive monkey mind, chattering mind, so that we can focus deeply into what God is love really means. And that means connecting the electromagnetic field, that is you. Streaming energy, that is you. Kaleidoscope of energy, that is you. Aligning that with the reality of compassion and love that is God. We stay in that space, we grow wings. This also takes the whole fragmentation by race and ethnicity and all of the stratification into consideration as well. It encompasses this because When you are standing in front of someone and you have acculturated yourself as a friend who already has a deep contemplative practice and is using the tools that this group of folks that we're coalescing is using to deepen that practice, you begin to yourself radiate love. You begin to radiate compassion. You begin to see wholeness. And when someone is standing in front of you, you do not have to do analysis of what their history is or the rest of the context. They will feel your energy. They will feel your heart center. They will feel your love. And you, as you acculturate yourself to doing this more and more, you will not see who they are, the veneer of who they are. What gender they are is irrelevant. What race they are is irrelevant. Their education is irrelevant. It literally becomes a moot point. When people came to Jesus and they stood there dripping their pestilence and self-loathing, he did not see one bit of it. He was vibrating, his energy, his frequency was that of love. His frequency was that of wholeness. He only had the capacity as an avatar to see their wholeness. When Mother Teresa was holding the lepers and the untouchables and the people who were dying of all of these diseases, she did not see their imperfection. She did not see the pestilence. She did not see the illness. All she saw was their wholeness. She didn't see race. What is that? That is just so nothing. All she saw, actually it's not even seeing, all she was connecting with, all Jesus connected with, all Mohandas Gandhi connected with, all Siddhartha Gautama connected with, all of these avatars just connected. They cultivated, they knew how to tune out of discursive, distracting, insane worlds around them. And Quakers have done this forever. We come apart. We step out. We eliminate the distraction so that we can get rid of the societal goop, just like the abolitionists did, just like the suffragists did. We peel that off. And we get out of our heads and we center in the heart. And when you center in the heart, the energy becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And then you lose the capacity to see difference. That's the evolutionary step. Jesus' energy was so strong that and say Mother Teresa had this ability as well. As Mohandas Gandhi, many avatars do. Their energy becomes so powerful in a field that the healing that takes place is because their energy is so powerful. The energy of everyone in proximity comes into alignment. That's the evolutionary step we are called to take. The ephemeral veneers are unnecessary. We can get beyond it. They are moot points. So, the ministry that has come out of my time in Pendle Hill. It's time to wake up. Time is now. Time is to seize the moment now. Because you saw that earth on the ice cream cone? That's what we're looking at here. So the ministry that came out of my time at Pendle Hill is called Quaker Pathways Forward, rekindling the fire of Fox. And it's fire because it's heart energy. It's compassion, it's love, but it doesn't happen by osmosis. It takes practice, which is why, as I mentioned, some among you may be called. It takes discipline. It takes, two friends this week came at it from different aspects. In the interest group, one friend said, if we do this, if I take this deep dive, what does that mean for the way we live on the planet? And I said, yes, friend, that's going to have to shift big time, really big time. So I'm holding my arms out saying, if you choose, we started out by saying these folks are going to be champions, like the Valiant 60, and we ditched that word, the friends didn't like that. And then we talked about points of light, which sound too much like George Bush. And thanks to friend Paulette in one of the interest groups, we're now seeds of light. So if you have interest, and I'm just saying this really, really honestly, if you have an interest in being a seed of light, do know, just like that friend in the interest group said to me, that means an awful lot is going to shift. We're actually going to have to examine how we live on the earth at this point, and I said yes. And then another friend at dinner yesterday said, this means that I'm going to have to look at myself and dig deep into who I am and have the courage to shift my life, because once you get a taste of the joy of living in your heart, once you get the taste of the clarity that comes when you sit on that bench, and those moments of clarity are not every now and then, or happen a few times a lifetime when you write a pamphlet about it. It's not that. It's literally making that your quest for a daily way of being. Every time you sit on that bench, as you walk around, you are connected. That means you have to turn the dial on who you are. It means you actually have to become like the early friends. It means you actually have to live Quakerism all of the time. Not just sometimes, not just when it's convenient, not just when the community is around you. The seeds of light are folks that have that kind of dedication, that kind of commitment, because the earth is at that point. That was my picture for the storm clouds underneath, the duality of looking beneath the clouds and seeing what looks like serious, thorny, yucky problems, and being pulled into these problems and just analyzing all these problems while we want to live here. When you can be there, centered in your heart, then you can look down the clouds and truly be of help, truly leverage, truly move things forward. If you're under cloud cover, no, it's just precipitating more of the same. So, friends who do feel this calling will have to shift their lives. If you are about service, your life is about transformation, that this is the invitation to you. And you are doing this, as I said at the outset of this talk, in service to a planet that is in serious, serious travail. This is where these friends will go. As it says there, we open our eyes and we think we're seeing the whole world out there, but what has become clear in just a few centuries is that when you look at the spectrum, we're seeing less than 1 billion of what's there. If you choose this path, friends, what you're doing is broadening your vision. If the way we see the dualistic mind at this point, if I was to see this swath of friends in this area here, I would be taking in maybe 70% of who is here. Because our minds, our brains are literally programmed to filter out a lot of information that's actually very helpful information. The older part of our brain is immediately trained to see anything that is moving quickly, anything that's shiny, and it's distracting because we had to be worried about the mastodon and the saber-toothed tiger and all of those things. So we are very easily distracted, and the economy that we're a part of, the society we're a part of, loves to distract us, to pull us away from our true self. So we not only are fighting mechanistic, Newtonian, Cartesian, separatist, unidirectional thinking, but we actually, that's why it's mind training, it doesn't happen by osmosis. We're literally working to control our own chattering mind and our own distraction. So I would normally take maybe 70% of who is here, and then I factor in all of the way my brain works and all of my conditioning. I have points of reference that make me only focus on one thing. So the field starts to narrow, and all I see when I take action and actions start to move forward, all I see is Marta in that camera. I don't see any of the rest of it. And that's what we do. We function with a tiny, infinitesimally small amount of reality. The practices that I'm inviting you to consider will change your life because you're going to see more of yourself. You're going to see more of yourself in relationship to spirit. You're going to see the big thorny parts, and you're going to shine light on them so that they're no longer big and thorny. So I'm just going to go through a few of the things that correspond to this slide here. We will first need to witness just how trapped and conditioned we are by dualistic, binary, unidirectional, good, evil, light, dark, either or mind. We will pluck up our courage and watch our minds. We will slow our thoughts and associate into the power of emotions that align with spirit and observe our stream of consciousness. We'll be okay with noticing repetitive or negative or compulsive self-deprecating paranoid thoughts. We're just going to shine light on it. Because right now, most of our minds spend all of their time either endlessly processing the past or worrying about the future. We're going to accept and surrender to the fact that we don't need to divide the field to eliminate the shadow parts of ourselves that we then project out on people. We're going to recognize the shadow is not evil. It's just parts of ourselves that we pushed away down into the subconscious. It's just like a big shadow puppet. It's really big until you shine the light on it. You shine the light on it and it's very manageable. We reclaim those, again, we're getting rid of fragmentation. We reclaim those parts of ourselves that are considered evil or shadow. We embrace them. We shine light on them, and they stop interfering in our lives. It's a process. It doesn't happen by osmosis. So align with reality as it is. We surrender our usual points of reference. We do not judge things. We do not analyze things. We stop critiquing things. We stop trying to fix it, control it, get it to do what we want it to do. And that's why the contemplative path seems so frightening for many, because those are the familiar ways that we feel smart. Those are the familiar ways we feel superior. We have to let all that go. This is about humility. Realizing that there are parts of us that we need to embrace, need to realign with the vastness of who we are, and stop thinking we're just this little body separated from everybody else. We can choose the path of humility, living into emptiness. You have to be empty in order to receive, which is why the Western mind finds this so difficult, because we know all the things we know, and there's no space to get anything else in there. It's a question of being receptive and emptying self so spirit and light can flow through you unobstructed. When we are out of alignment with the field, with light, with love, with God, that is what we experience as pain. That is what we experience as suffering. Yes, ripples start where spirit moves, and spirit moves from the heart, friends, from the heart. That is the bottom line. So, whereas Siddhartha Gautama, Jesus of Nazareth, George Fox, Mohandas Gandhi, Mother Teresa, and all the individual avatars that embody this evolutionary consciousness in centuries gone by, They touch millions of lives. They move mountains in our times. And friends, it's our turn. Some among us, are called to catalyze and become that evolutionary step in consciousness as a gathered corporate body in order to impactfully, effectively wade into the deep of the 21st century challenges. The major shift in this century is from the individual avatar, the lone leader, to the enlightened collective. That would be Seeds of Light, that would be you. So I encourage you, in those moments when you look out over the vista of the state of the world, or the United States of America, or Canada, and you notice that society is careening toward a cliff at breakneck speed, remember that the DNA of Quaker contemplative practice, conscious, awakened, deep, direct, abiding union with undifferentiated spirit with God will enable us to sprout wings and soar. And the precipice of the old ways will recede in the distance behind us. We've got to get back to that garden. Remember, friends are golden. We are billion-year-old carbon, and we are still here. We come from a long line of survivors, and we will thrive. I invite you now to center in your heart, surrender and sink into the unconditional acceptance and self-compassion that awaits you there. Rest in it. Bask in the acceptance. Send that compassion through your whole being. When you feel the energy of compassion streaming and coursing through the whole of you, coursing through the whole of you, begin to deliberately and intentionally radiate it out and fill this space with your love, friends, as we enter silence for a few moments.
it. Of course, you're good now.
If those who are staying could come forward, that would be helpful. No, the reserve is no longer. Come on forward.
She was focused on you, Marta.
And if those who are going to go could please expedite their departure, that would also be helpful. There are more seats down front, and all those on the stage have bathed recently. Let's take a moment to gather. As led, if your friends will raise their hand and wait to be recognized, knowing that I will give preference to voices that are
gratifying to notice that those of us who do sort of Quaker spirituality or consider themselves earthquakers come to some of the same conclusions, even though we do our work separately. And that disastrous climate discontinuity is the great invitation in our time for an evolutionary leap forward, not biologically, but in conscience. Because I think what Marshall Massey was trying to say, the Pacific Rim, for instance, in 1984, the thing that's changed in the time that I've carried that ministry is it is now clear to me that one of the dualisms we've set up is that under 350 parts per billion of carbon in the upper atmosphere, under 3 degrees of Celsius change is somehow success or winning or saving our planet. And that over and beyond those levels, we have the runaway climate change. It's now obvious to me that the odds that we are not going to pass those marks practically none. So I wondered if you could comment on how we stay the course, don't get caught in the idea that we've been failed and that the fight is lost, but that we will have to make the evolutionary leap and the organism of Earth also. Or if that's part of what you've considered.
Thank you for the question. A friend of mine, Quaker Institute for the Future, had just done all of the math. He's writing a book with his son, and he emailed me right after he had extrapolated and actually gotten the numbers to figure out. He had done 3 different scenarios. If we pulled out all of the stops, if the current administration wasn't there and we were going in the direction we were going before, what that would be. He also calculated what the possibility would be with the current administration. And he called me because he was in a state of despair. He basically had gotten to the same point that you have. And we were trying to make light of it, but there's no way you can make light of it. Because we were saying the Earth is going to fry. And this is the 6th time that this has happened. The Earth actually is going to just fine and dandy. It's us that's going to have the problem. But every time it happens, that's why I talked about a remnant. That's why the ark was up there. Because we are in one of those times where when we stand fully in connection with spirit and light, it's kind of like standing above the clouds. We have a vantage point that prevents us from freaking out. We have a vantage point because we are so one with the vastness that we are compelled to do whatever we can, give 100% of who we are to fanning the flame under a robust and joyous remnant. There's always a remnant that gets through. And in the world today, in the United States, we're just starting to feel the droughts and the floods and the subsiding of the land, especially on the East Coast of Florida and all the way up, etc. This hit the rest of the world in the mid-70s. There are already hundreds of millions of people who have made their transition as a function of climate change. It's just the United States is just getting in the face, just now. So it's recalibrating, recognizing that if we are here to evolve as spiritual beings, it's the evolution of spiritual beings connected to the evolution of this planet that is the goal. It's not clinging and hanging on to and freaking out over our lives and how we're afraid to change or what's going to happen to the planet. Yes, it's going to happen. My point to friends is we can be above that cloud and be the remnant in a joyous way. You just give yourself 100% in the moment to what needs to be done in the moment. That's it. What good does despair and depression do? here to, and again, this is just me, it's the galaxies, the universe, the planets, the solar system, the people, all the sentient beings in common, all evolving and syncing together. When there's a disruption in any system, the system will readjust. Right now, we have a big system to readjust. But, as I said, it's not easy. We literally have to align ourselves all of the time. Like, as I keep bringing up Fox, there are people that do this. And for him, just like race and socioeconomic class and all the rest of these things pale in comparison when you're standing in that space and you're deeply connected to contemplatively, the rest of it is like, so what? Even if it's talking about existential problems like the planet. Yeah, it's just a question of your vantage point. And it takes a lot of courage, because it's easier to just pull the covers over your head. Yes, ma'am, that's right.
Thank you. Thank you for a very powerful, moving, and centering presentation, causing us to focus our attention. I just want to say that certainly if I didn't see potential in drawing down carbon from the atmosphere in natural ways, I would feel the only thing we can do is what you described. However, I alternatively see that we can put our shoulders to the grindstone and work. Friends are very good at work parties and work teams and rising to the challenge of practical things that need to be done. So for in Toronto, we just adopted 80% reduction of GHGs by 2050. It's not enough. But that we have to stop our fossil fuel use. At the same time, we have to draw carbon from the atmosphere. And Paul Hawkins' book, Drawdown, talks about that. The soil will save us. There's a book about regenerative practices. Vanda Nishida, others, talking about that. And I would prefer, because I have a grandchild and children, to work as hard as I can with whoever else is willing to work, and more people will see the need to do that, to actually avert this crisis. So I think we have a 1% chance. Why don't we go for it? I don't want to bypass that opportunity, that possibility.
Absolutely, friend. It's long-term. When I was talking about the difference between 20th century activism and 21st century activism, there are two pieces there. We spend a lot of time doing lobbying and protesting and lined out in front of bulldozers and meetings in front of buildings and those types of things. I think that if you're familiar with Joanna Macy, she calls those holding actions. And holding actions are extremely important in that they alleviate some suffering some of the time for a short period of time, which is extremely important. However, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. It alleviates suffering for a time. But as I mentioned to one of the groups I was talking to, we spent the last 30 years putting climate change legislation in place, and climate adaptation regulations, and safe protections for water, for the air, etc. And in a matter of 3 executive brushstrokes, gone. All the lobbying, all of the sit-ins, all the protests, all the marches, all of that time. 20th century, we need to step that up, and practice is one way, but to this friend's point, it's long, and the gentleman who I was last night said we're going to have to change the way we do things. It's long-term local resilience building. It is relocalization of food production, access to water, transportation, and then connecting, not in a disconnected, hunker down in your little village or town or hamlet, but once you've done that, connect to other nodes of villages and towns and hamlets. The planet isn't going to warm uniformly. There's some places where it's going to happen worse than others. There's some places where the land is going to subside worse than other places. We're going to have to get real and get out of places that are in floodplains and stop rebuilding there. We're going to have to actually get together with friends and neighbors and figure out, okay, at any given point in time, any town, village, hamlet in the United States and Canada has exactly 3 days of food left on hand to feed the population. Now, what if the ships and the buses and the planes and the trains can't make it through with your food? And these climate disruptions will get more frequent, will be more intense, and the recovery period will roll right into the next event. That being said, the disruptions will get longer. We need to figure out how to feed ourselves locally. And again, the shift here is, it's not just about supporting your local CSA and farmers market. It's figuring out how you are going to convince somebody in your neighborhood or do it yourself, even if it's just window boxes or raised beds, or something so that you can prolong the amount of time your family can eat when there are climate disruptions. It's about sitting with people and figuring out, my town has 3 days of food. What would it take to get moved toward resilience? What is ideal? And that's what I'm doing in the African diaspora. We're looking at what land is available to us that is agricultural land we can grow food on, how many people are there that need to be fed, what is the gap between what the food is being produced now and the obstacles to producing the food there, and what we actually need to feed those people, and then innovatively trying to figure out ways how we're going to get those people fed, how those people are going to feed themselves. That's what the remnant, and that term sounds kind of draconian, but it really isn't. And that's why I say a robust, joyful, spiritually evolved number of people that we can get as many as we possibly can through that hot eye of that needle, and do it with joy is the word that just keeps coming to mind, because that is the energy we need to stay in to be able to do this. The other types of emotion that are self-defeating, really, it's a meditative practice of bringing yourself away from that to focus on what you envision as opposed to what you observe. You keep envisioning, keep building toward a robust, healthy remnant. And it's a question of training your mind not to go down the vortex of fear or down the vortex of depression. It does you no good. It really doesn't. And people need you to be doing the resilience building you're talking about. So it's not just, well, throw my hands out and go to your remnant. It's a question of, okay, grow food. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, back here in there.
Thank you so much, because I felt that vibration. When I had cancer, I felt that quantum science, and I read that biology of belief, and the whole idea of changing the mind to alert the body system. So if you would, just a little of your story. How did you get there?
Me?
Yeah.
It's been a very long road. I have, the way I got to what really drives this, as opposed to all the other stuff I did through, which I will not even bore you with. I have a 37-year Buddhist practice and intersecting with an 11-year Quaker practice. So understanding the power of the undifferentiated field, I'm not theist, the undifferentiated field, which is God, which is light, and standing in that. And to tell you the truth, what attracted me to Quakerism, in addition to the fact that I started going to meetings because I put my last son in a Quaker school, was the fact that I recognized in George Fox an enlightenment of Buddha. And I was just so completely mesmerized by what this friend was able to do. I said, this is a group of people that seriously has a track record. They don't even, Quakers don't even have to look anywhere to reinvent anything. This George Fox guy has it going on. So that's kind of how I ended up here. I saw an enlightened being, and the fact that so many friends, well, at least in every century, whatever the movement was, there was always a group of friends that held fast to that early understanding of standing in the field. And because of that, They were able to literally move mountains. You talk about the abolition, literally 75% of friends in Philadelphia either were slave traders or slave owners when the abolition started out. By the time it was 7%, when the meetings started barring that. Literally a tiny little group of people, because they were plugged into the undifferentiated field and experienced true reality, not mind stuff, true reality, were able to shift the consciousness of an entire country, 2 countries, including UK. For me, there is just no parallel to that. I mean, it's just, Quakers just are incredible people. So that's what I'm saying.
Hello, thank you for your presentation and your stimulating ideas. But for me, and I'm glad we're having this question and answer because it was hard for me to make practical what you were talking about. So now answering these questions, I'm able to think about this transcendence in a practical way or base it on some experience that I've had. I was in Cuba right after the special period, which was when the Soviet Union collapsed, and they had no food, they had nothing. And they had to figure out how to feed themselves, and they did. They made it through the special period, which is what they call it. And I think of living in New York City, you know, and other people probably live in urban areas where at any time they can cut off our food, and we don't even have 3 days of food in the city. You know, so in the permaculture community, the way we look at this transition is that people have to learn skills, and you have to have skills that are strategic based on where you live. Like in Cuba, everybody had a garden, and they had a garden wherever they could find a garden. And so like in New York City, you know, we try practices like guerrilla gardening, where we'll plant food, things that are edible in public places. Even though, you know, we're like in Prospect Park or in an island if there's a ground, and also learning edible foods and edible plants, learning what is edible that just goes around you. So I would love it if you could talk in more ways like, you know, now that you shared it, you have a Buddhist practice, because I was feeling a little bit like, okay, Quakers are the chosen people, but there are other people who have these practices and have practiced them across cultures. So I would love to understand more fully your ideas around this quantum shift that needs to be made in like a more practical way. It's scientific stuff I get a little lost around.
Well, the practical things that you described are absolutely essential. Growing, if you're in New York City, if you have a community garden, making certain that you're part of some kind of collective. The critical piece is it's not going to be easy to do by yourself coming through this. So being part of a community garden, growing food yourself, the permaculture movement, the agroecology movement, the slow food movement, and there are all kinds of ways you can get connected to do that local resilience building. The coupling that, though, with the internal work is really where I'm coming from as well. There are growing movements of people who are doing isolated work. What I'm looking to have happen is creating a groundswell of people who understand that cooperation, collaboration, the way we relate to each other, being able to be more accurate in our social justice work is only going to happen if we pull ourselves out of a very cerebral, analytical way of working with things. In the West, we don't know how to work together. I used to work with transition environmental movements, and it only penetrated just so deeply in the United States because people would would get together and they couldn't hold groups together. They would be fighting each other all the time, or they would get burnt out and just dissipate. And it's because we've been trained to think individualistically. We've been trained to compete. We've been trained with a scarcity consciousness, funding for things, and there's just so much to go around. If you don't plug into a deeper understanding of the vastness that is true unity, true, that literally the energy of true compassion, you're still trying to make yourself get along with people in these groups that are doing local resilience building. And that's why I lift up Quaker communities that have decided to be transformational communities as opposed to just belonging communities, because this is a group of people that can in fact do the resilience building work, but also can do the internal work simultaneously. It's the local activism married with how to do this on a long term. This is for perpetuity. This is forever. The earth is going to be changing forever and ever and ever. It's not a flash in the pan, you get through this and then it's done. We're going to have to figure out how to relate to each other in a way that our society does not cultivate. And the only way to do that is to plug into something much deeper. So we can have we can have food in all the community gardens, and the permaculture people can be out there with their earth ships, and agroecology people are there, returning generation farmers. Yes, but we're still in that same mentality that makes it very difficult for that to endure, and very difficult for that to be harmonious, and to get us through where we need to go. The shift in consciousness has to be an internal thing that supports the external resilience building. And it is very practical in the sense that if we don't, what's going to happen with all these movements is going to continue to happen. People will not be able to hold us together.
No, can I just say a follow-up?
Sure.
The question I'm asking you is, and that's what we have talked about and learned in the permaculture movement. The biggest downfall is that inability to work together. Like, people will get together and it'll just fall apart, arguing, ego, whatever. So the component that you're talking about then, because it is recognized that we can't work together, and that's why these movements keep falling apart. And so we're saying then, and I'm just trying to mirror this back so I understand it, that Quakers possess a practice, and that practice is our sitting in silence. I'm adding words, you didn't say this. Our practice is that sitting in silence that you understand is the ability that's given us over time to be able to continue to work collectively for what we feel is our calling or our higher calling. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. It's contemplative practice. But what I'm saying here is it's contemplative practice that is now informed by how we can actually work with our minds more specifically, how we can clear away cognitive distortion, meaning clear away points of reference, ways of thinking, belief patterns, behavior patterns that muddy our thought process, muddy our thinking. It's clearing a way to deeper understanding of spirit and light, longer periods of time in contact with that, so that we are living in two worlds simultaneously. We're living in the light, in spirit, which literally kind of recognizes the divine part of self, or the light part of self. We literally start to transform. The practice itself starts to transform you. It starts to transform the way you see people. So the idea of not getting along with someone because of who they are, or how they're educated, or racial things, and all of that, it really becomes a moot point. All of that, when you truly are connecting consistently with light, and that it becomes almost intoxicating. That's why they say mysticism, because it does tend to carry you into this space. But we know that you can live that simultaneously. And when you become that, you become love. You become compassion. Think of people like Gandhi, or Mother Teresa, people that you know for in fact, have walked around and have reached out and embraced people that no one else would go near because they're seeing their wholeness. It's literally deep Quaker practice informed by how we know the mind-brain works. Literally shift your lenses so you're apprehending much more of reality and much more of who you are. You see how vast you are. I'm going to give you an example of that kind of understanding. There's a neurobiologist called Dan Siegel, who he was traveling in one of the South American countries, and you know the ledges that are around the mountains that are very, very narrow. He was on a donkey, and he was the animal. What do you call an animal? Bolted, exactly. And he was dragged. His foot was in the stirrup of this animal's on the animal. So instead of when the animal ran, it dragged Dan literally all along this rugged, rocky pathway, literally slamming its head consistently against the rocks with the stones. When he woke up in the hospital, he literally had no face. He literally had he had reconstructive surgery, but anyway, he had no face, he had no recognition of who he was. He literally had no self. And this lasted for about 2 days. And he said that was one of the most spiritually enlightening experiences of his life. He recognized viscerally, experientially at that point, that his self was much, much larger than this corporeal small self. He felt part of the vastness that is himself, that was himself. People go to Costa Rica and Ecuador and they do all the ayahuasca experiences to turn that part of their brain on so they feel artificially that vast part of self. It happened to him through an accident. When you sit on that bench, when you sit on your cushion, you have the opportunity to tune in to that same vastness that is yourself. And when you do not want to go back. That's what Quaker mystics, the Christian, the Trappist monks, it's not like Quakers have happened to absolute truth. They've just been able to leverage it century after century to make stuff happen. But the Trappist monks, Thomas Merton, it has the same kind of thing. The Benedictines. It's not just Buddhist and Hindu monks. It is spiritual traditions that have long-standing, deep connection with the vastness that is self and is part of their practice. Now, to date, it has been predominantly monastic traditions because you're in that situation. You don't have to worry about anything. You're just in your monastery, and you spend your whole life making that connection over and over and over again. And that's how the Middle Ages, people got to the Middle Ages. Those guys in Europe literally held down the fort. They were literally invoking the light in the darkest time. They kind of were the anchors for the light. However, unlike the Trappist monks, or the Benedictines, or the Dominicans, or Buddhist monks, or Hindu seers, Quakers have that tradition and they get out there and they make things happen. That's the difference. But it's still the same practice, which is all over the planet. Like I said, it doesn't. A friend of mine who's part of this group of people that we're putting together said Quakers have a tendency usually to back into this. You know, you're sitting there and all of a sudden you have this experience and you are taken aback by it, and it's an ecstatic experience, but it happens by happenstance. What we're talking about doing now is getting a group of people together that it's not happenstance anymore. We want to experience the vastness that is self, as spirit, as light, as the undifferentiated, more and more of the time. Because if we don't, you saw that melting planet? That's going to be There will be fewer people that get through the eye of the needle, and you can't get more practical than that. It is understanding what is not physical energy, which seems woo, but it really isn't that. It's just shifting your lenses to understand you're not just this separated being. The people that are sitting right in front of you are basking in your energy right now. Simon behind you is in your energy. You are in his energy. These are energy fields that are all merging. That's what Jesus understood, and that's when people came into his field, his heart energy. They were healed. That's pretty practical. So I'm saying combine that with the community gardens and the CSAs and the window boxes in Manhattan. Seriously, it's the two together. We must be a remnant that can feed itself and a remnant that is truly plugged into the vastness of who we are. If not, it's just a cerebral practice of community gardening. Simon? But friends, you have white index cards. If you're interested in receiving information, continuing in this process, please fill out those cards, and I guess you just put them up here on the lectern when you're finished. Your name and your email. It would be great to have your monthly yearly meeting too. But name and email address? Yes, sir.
I just want to suggest that as Quakers, one of the things we can, one way we can do the most good is to share who we are, to share besides our history, our traditions, our methods of making decisions, our way of worshiping silence, our creedless structure, our non-hierarchical structure. We have something that many people in the world, I think, are seeking, and we can share those things. We're not all neuroscientists, or we're not even necessarily experts in survival, but we do have our traditions and our methods of worship.
Thank you.
Thank you for your talk. You gave me plenty to live into WakeFest FGC 2018. I'm wondering if you would comment on any hopeful possibilities you see related to the internet or other technology.
Well, I can't directly address what might happen to internet. The current administration is doing all kinds of things to shift that particular landscape. However, when I say that a powered down post-carbon future that is using less fossil fuels, that is more locally oriented, that doesn't mean regressing back to the dark ages or throwing out everything. It means that we come up with innovative hybrid ways of living a quality of life that is simpler, which is another reason why the Quaker testimonies just kind of live into a post-carbon future, a way of not ditching technology, but whatever is not going to harm the earth, that is going to serve us, we can take forward and meld that with powered-down, carbon-constrained reality. So I can't speak directly to the issue. I don't know where that's going to go, but I'm definitely not saying throw out technology. I'm just saying what is going to serve us, that's not going to continue to degrade this earth, is where we need to go.
I'm curious if you have specific practices. I'm curious if you have specific practices for the spiritual aspect that you're speaking of. I'm familiar with Metta. I'm wondering if you have other practices that you can lead me to.
I think, as Christopher alluded to, and I Tuesday night. Some of this comes from what we know from neurolinguistics and what we know from how we work with the mind brain there. Some of it is a long-standing contemplative practice, actually 2,500 years old. And the cadre of people who have begun doing this work already, we started out with some very, very basic practices. And actually in the interest group I did here on Tuesday night, and we've also walked through that door in the Quaker Earth Care workshop on trees. We looked at very specific ways where you can begin to take command and control of that chattering, discursive mind so that you can tune into the deeper energy of you as spirit. So there's a whole bunch of practices, and this group of people, as I said, you have to make that, it doesn't happen by osmosis. The pia matter, the brain, we know from neuroplasticity, will do what you direct it to do, but you have to practice it consistently. Not just first day in the meeting house, but consistently make it a part of your life. And there are many practices that we are going to wade in very deeply when I get back to Middle Hill in August, I think. That group of people will resume, and new friends that I've come in contact with from all the congregations I'll be going to this summer will also begin group practices as well. The idea is that we light these little flames all over the place, and we have a community of practice. Everything is beloved community. Even this group of people supports each other because we're going to be swimming upstream even among Quakers. A lot of folks are really not into connecting to spirit or light all of the time. It's a scary thing for a lot of people. So there are many practices. They come from many fields. They have to do with understanding how the mind and the brain work, and also how the electromagnetic fields in the body work, because that's how we radiate that love out as well. So practices are tried and true. Yes.
I just wanted to share, I might say, a historical fact that could inform going forward. That in the 60s, there were hundreds and hundreds of organizations on military bases working against war. Literally hundreds of them. Soldier-oriented houses, cafes, various different forms. There's only one left. There is one left out of all those hundreds. And it is supported by North Carolina friends. It has institutional backing that none of the others have. And yet it still is. Quaker House failed.
Beautiful. I'm told that we have to bring this to a close, but I just wanted to give you an example. Are you familiar with Thich Nhat Hanh? We recommended, I can't remember if Dr. King recommended him or you recommended Dr. King. Recommended Thich Nhat Hanh. To your point, you probably know that the Americans bombed Thich Nhat Hanh's village and the villages of his families over and over again during the Vietnam War. And every time the Americans bombed his village, he would get together all of the monks and all of the nuns, and they would rebuild the village. And long after the war was over, he came to the United States. He used to do these tours. And he reached out to the Vietnam vets who had bombed his village. And he held retreat after retreat for hundreds of Vietnam vets. And they were all the PTSD and all the woundedness that they had experienced and the carnage that they left behind. And here was this little tiny monk who, to my point before, who you're looking at, whether it was an American soldier or whether that had literally killed his family, literally we're talking about doing here. He, like Fox, he lives in the conventional world of all the things we see, the tasks that we have to do, but he stays connected to the undifferentiated, light, spirit, etc. So he did not see Vietnam vet. He did not see wounded people. He did internally wounded people. He did not see men that had butchered his family. He saw people who needed him, and he saw their wholeness. And when they came to these retreats, they went through a healing catharsis like it was absolutely phenomenal. So this is the kind of work that we're inviting friends to do, to see so far deep, so much deeper than all of the veneers, by using these practices that are very old and very new if we add quantum science in there, to stay in contact with that level of being. So all of the social justice stuff shifts because we're seeing it from a whole different angle. And we're not captive to it. We're actually making shifts in it. So, okay, I think we're finished. Thank you very much.